Hello everybody, it is Frosty the Songman. It is January 24th, 2020. This is the first album review of 2020 that I've done. It's kind of a cold, misty, overcast day here in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States. Kind of reminds me of a day that may be happening in a small town outside of Birmingham, England, which is where Nick Drake grew up. And this is the album I'm going to review. There's actually two. This is the first thing I've done where I'm going to review two, because I couldn't really decide which one to do. This is Nick Drake's first album, 5 Leaves Left. And I believe this was recorded in late 60s. And then 72 was his last album, Pink Moon. This is a little more barren, stripped down, and solitary sounding. But the first one is very, very good. They're both very, very good. This is a little more produced. It's got a lot more strings and woodwinds, orchestration. And I don't want to put down the middle album. Brighter Later is a fine, fine album. It's a picture of them. So this is a fine album too. I just decided to focus more on these, and actually I'm just going to tell more about Nick Drake in general, so all 3 albums are worth getting. Alright, so Nick Drake, born to Rodney and Molly Drake in the late 40s. His father, Rodney, was an engineer. He was a civil servant over there, and he met Molly, who was the daughter of a civil servant, and he had to wait till she was like 21 to marry her, because she was a little too young. So she turned 21 and then they got married. So after that they returned to England and they settled on where Rodney had a job in Tanworth-in-Arden. Tanworth-in-Arden. It's a little bit south of Birmingham in Warwickshire, England, kind of central western England. And yeah, so Nick Drake was actually born in Rangoon, Burma, which is kind of crazy. So they moved back to England and they raised their child, Nick. And Nick around the house really heard a lot of the music and absorbed the tones and the feeling of his mother's music. His mother was a songwriter too, and actually his father composed too. So he had 2 songwriters, the son of 2 songwriters. His mother was actually a very nice singer and a very nice songwriter, and she was a great poet too. I read one of her poems. So his mother was very artistic, and he actually took after his mother more, because Gabrielle, his sister, said that. Gabrielle said she took after more the father, but Nick took after more the very artistic mother. And yeah, listening to one of Molly Lloyd was her maiden name, but Molly Drake's recordings, home recordings, it's very eerie, and it sounds a lot like Nick. You know, it just came out of their DNA, like they both composed similarly. But it's often said, Nick Drake, there's nobody that composes and sings like him and plays like him. But his mother actually could fit that category, because they were of a similar vein. Nick was upper middle class. The family was upper middle class. He went to a nice public school in Wiltshire, the county of Wiltshire in England. It was called Marlborough College. And yeah, he was big into rugby. He was a good sprinter, actually. And he learned clarinet, sax, and piano. He played in the school orchestra. And yeah, he would stay up late at night playing his guitar. He was really into alternate tunings, which I'll get into a little bit later. But basically, like, you know, that's a low C where it should be an E. And this wasn't his only tuning he used, but this was a popular one that he used a lot. C, and then G, F, I think. No, C. C, G, C, F, C, E. So obviously it's not those, because I have a capoed, but that's the general if it were open. So he's really into that type in it. It really matched his voice. His voice was very fragile, He didn't really project much, but that was just his style. He wasn't Geddy Lee or, you know, the lead singer of, he wasn't Ronnie James Dio, you know. He was very more in the line of George Harrison, you know, softer voice. The genius was more in his songwriting, his delivery, the whole package. You had to look at the whole song, the whole package. He wasn't like this star performer. Actually, he really disliked performing, and that's one of the reasons why everything went south. He met this guy named Robert Kirby, who would later go on to arrange his first 2 albums. So he met Robert Kirby in 1967, and yeah, they'd go on to work together. And really, you know, Nick's music is really great, just him and a guitar, which is most of what this is, although I think this has some arrangement stuff on it, but this has more of the bigger arrangements. He was signed to Island Records with Chris Blackwell, I think, being the head of that back then in the late 60s. And yeah, Robert arranged, he did a great arrangement, and just very fine performances of string quartets and small woodwind ensembles. It was good both ways. I mean, if he was just playing and singing, it was very intimate and great, but Robert Kirby did a great job at arranging, where he would have these melodies behind him, and the melodies wouldn't necessarily match what Nick was doing. They were very, they're going their own way. So it led to a beautiful joining. When they joined marriage, you know, these 2 melodies going on, which really kind of matched Nick, because Nick was very solemn. I mean, he did have friends when he was younger, but he kind of could tolerate people to a certain point, I think. Then he wanted to be alone and get away from people. So he was a very solitary man in a lot of ways. I think it's kind of great that the music reflects that. You know, he's singing his own melody, and there's other things going on around him, but he's still in his own world, yet he's interacting with these other things going on. So it's actually very genius on a deep level. So he went to Cambridge, which is a very, you know, well-respected college still even to this day. He did a lot of hanging out, playing guitar, smoking pot. Even before he went to Cambridge, or right around the time he went, he took a trip down to Morocco to get good pot with his friends in southern France, just messing around, just being a bohemian type guy. And it's funny, a lot of upper class and upper middle class people kind of go into that lifestyle. I think I don't know, maybe they see the stress that their parents go through and they don't want that lifestyle maybe. But anyway, he was hanging out, he was kind of studying, I forget what major he was studying, but he was definitely reading a lot of English literature. He was into Jonathan Swift, William Blake, Keats and Yeats, a lot of classic English literature he was reading, and I think he was really affected by it. His lyrics are very poetic and very literate, in a way that's kind of profound, like English literature is. You know, they're not throwaway lines. They're very kind of grand, poetic lines, for lack of a better way to put it. All right, so I'm pretty sure he dropped out of Cambridge, and he got hooked up with Island Records, and he produced this record fairly fast, 5 Leaves Left, and this was in 1969, and yeah, I won't play any of it. You can easily go to listen to this, but just very, very unique. He's kind of got a morose type sound, very introspective. Nobody else like it, you know. He's his own man, his own songwriter. The record company sent him out touring, but he really didn't do that well. He hated the rooms where people were not paying attention. Everybody was talking and drinking. And those performances, he actually didn't play that well. People did mention he did give some good performances, but those were more in intimate settings where people were listening. So he really got fed up just playing for people that didn't really pay attention. It was a big letdown. I think he knew internally that this would really affect the rest of his life. The fact that he's not going to be this touring, performing guy. And even one person at Island Records said, "Why don't you just go to BBC and sit down in their studios, nice, comfortable, dark studios, and just do it that way. That way you don't have to talk to anybody. You just sit down and play your guitar and sing." But that was at the point when he was really suffering from depression, more so than his earlier parts of his life. So he didn't even give him an answer, yes or no. I don't think he really even got back to the guy. So yeah, Nick did suffer from depression and insomnia. A lot of times, like, he would stay up and play his guitar late into the night. He would sleep some and then wake up in the middle of the night, go downstairs and get some cornflakes, go back, try to sleep. And some mornings he would sleep till 10 or 11 in the morning, just trying to catch up. And I feel like a kindred spirit to him, because I feel a lot of the same way he did. Sometimes I can't sleep at night. I definitely feel like early in my career it was very, very promising, and then it kind of went to hell, and a lot of my dreams of doing music just were kind of shattered after a number of years. So very big disappointment. So then you have to live with that. You have to live with the fact that you're not destined to be a performer, a famous performer. So Nick, another thing, coupled with the fact that he wasn't performing much, and this was part of the reason why his records weren't selling, but his records were not selling. I mean, I think this sold 5,000 copies, and this one sold 5,000 copies too. And all of these, actually this one did worst of all. His last one did less than 5,000, so just terrible sales. And Nick got really depressed because everybody around him was telling him he was so good, he was a genius, but yet he couldn't earn money. He was just struggling to get by without the financial recognition. So he felt so disappointed in himself and the world, just because he felt, okay, well, everybody thinks I'm great. I'm trying to bring this music out to show the world, to change people's lives. So all that seems to be in place, but the financial reward never came, and it just made him feel like a failure. So he gradually became more and more depressed, he went to get to a psychiatrist and got some antidepressant pills, and one night he just took too many, and he took about 30, I think. So it's not sure whether he committed suicide or he just took too many pills. No, but nobody's really sure how that ended. But he's got 3 albums, and I'll play a little bit of the style. Like I say, it's a kind of a strange tuning. I'll play Pink Moon, the title song off that album. So that's kind of an example of his song, one of his songs. Nick Drake, very interesting, unique musician, songwriter, very good exact guitar player. People are always amazed at how very good and consistent his guitar playing was. And there'll never be another Nick Drake. Thanks a lot. Frosty the Songman signing out.